Well, as I like to say about our friends at Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty, it's wonderful to have the good guys on our side, and I am delighted to have joining me this morning Research Director, good guy, Will Flanders. Good morning. How are you?
Good morning. Doing well. Thanks for having me on.
So let's talk. As much as I said to you off air, I'm like, oh, this is going to be depressing, but Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty has unveiled a property tax calculator, and it's depressing enough to write that check for our property taxes, or to write a couple of checks for property taxes. I guess some people have them escrowed, and that's less of a reminder to people. But let's talk about how it correlates to the spending in, as an example, the Milwaukee Public Schools.
Yeah, absolutely. So, for those that aren't familiar, which hopefully don't follow the Milwaukee Public Schools too closely up there, but it has implications for the entire state. Milwaukee is proposing a $250 million referendum on the ballot on April 2nd. This is on top of a significant referendum that they passed just a couple years ago. And so what we try to do here, and it's something we would like to expand in the future to include all referenda, we've been discussing how to make that happen, is just to look at the cost to property taxpayers of this referendum, like put it into words that actually are meaningful to folks with their property tax implications. And so, just for example, with a $300,000 house, which actually nowadays with years of Biden inflation is on the low end of the spectrum, people would be looking at over $670 property tax increase. And for folks in the middle class, that's several weeks of grocery bills, right? That's a significant increase in your payments throughout the year. So, we're just trying to make folks aware of that. And MBS does have implications for the state as a whole with their low proficiency. And even when they go to referendum, it has implications for the sort of spread of state money around the state going forward. So it should be meaningful to everyone.
Well, and let's talk about where this money is actually, I don't know if earmarked is the right word, but what they are going to finance, because it doesn't appear that all of it, I don't even know what portion of it is going to even reach the classroom.
Yeah, that's the question you'd think they'd have a ready answer for, right? With a district with under 20% proficiency in both math and reading, and not just a one-year aberration. This is decades upon decades of failing their students. You'd think they'd want to make it pretty clear where the money was going to be spent. But one of the biggest things they've been criticized for here is that there is no real earmarking of what's going to be done with all of this money. It's sort of just general operations. They do mention some vague categories, but really it's up in the air what this is for. And for property taxpayers down here, it's incumbent that they do sort of ask these questions before they decide to vote for it. So in an election that we anticipate will be relatively low turnout with the primaries over, it's going to be a challenge to defeat this.
I see in your release that you do talk about salaries of central office staff. Many, I presume most of whom have little or no interaction with students. And I think there's a significant disconnect between a six-figure salary for someone that has no interaction with students and the actual teachers that are in the classrooms. I would presume that they're not receiving a six-figure salary in I would probably argue that that's not a good idea in light of the fact that their proficiency is so low, because what is there any accountability for anyone in the Milwaukee Public Schools if at 20% proficiency rate?
Yeah, it's a great question. Milwaukee has 52 central office employees. So imagine that, over 50 employees that just sit in the central office all day and, as you say, have no interaction with students. When we expand that a little more to look at people that are not assigned to a specific school, it's over 2,800 employees in the district that are not assigned to a specific school. So this isn't just a Milwaukee problem. We've seen layer upon layer of bureaucracy built up in our school systems around the state. Milwaukee is emblematic of that. It's one of the worst offenders. but it's far from alone. And we do have 43 of those administrators out of 52 making a salary of over 100,000. Which, if you talk to Wisconsinites around the state, I'm sure many would be very happy to have such a lucrative career. And as we know, with government employees, very low chance of losing your job. So a very cushy job, and over $100,000 salary. That's apparently not enough for the MPS system to demand even more.
Well, and imagine if Act 10 weren't uh, in force right now. I mean, imagine what fringe benefits would come along with that. I mean, I think they already do have significant benefits in the Milwaukee Public Schools. I think, as you stated, the average pay of the central office staff is 123,116, with fringe benefits of 28,114. So that's all. That's all on the backs of the taxpayers, and yet they're asking for additional funding with this referenda. Will, what other communities, or I mean, have you studied any of the other communities that have referenda on their ballots coming up in about 2 weeks?
Yeah, so there are over 90 district referenda on ballots around the state this year. I don't believe Wausau is one of them. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but there's you just had one a couple years ago. But 90 districts around the state going to referendum. And I think, at every one of these instances, we did a deep dive here just because of the outsized impact Milwaukee has on the state. It's important for local folks to ask these sorts of questions. What are you planning to do with the money? Where are you currently spending your money? I'll just note that Will's dashboard that we have, you can go to will-law.org and look at our school scorecard. It includes a number for percentage of administrative staff. It also shows you proficiency and a number of different and spending currently in the district. So you can see what each district is spending, how much of that's going to the central office, and again, what results they're getting for that current spending. So I'd encourage folks to check that out before deciding whether or not to support even more spending in your local public schools.
So whether or not you have a referenda on your ballot, you can be assured that on April 2nd, there will be 2 constitutional amendment questions on your ballot. Can you talk a little bit about those, Will?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've been working quite a lot on this project on this process over the last couple of years. These 2 amendments deal with the so-called Zucker bucks, the CTCL money that was put into Wisconsin elections during the 2020 election. We've seen cities like Milwaukee and Madison actually seeking more money for this election. What this did is it sort of disproportionately benefited Democratic areas of the state. Millions and millions of dollars put into election administration for things like get out the vote efforts. In Racine, it financed an illegally used voting van. We think that billionaires of either party shouldn't be financing our elections. Amendment 1 bans private funding. The first ballot question bans private funding entirely, unequivocally. So the billionaires, right or left, can't put money into our election administration. And Amendment 2 bans non-election administration employees from having access to election administration documents. This stems from what we saw in Green Bay, where representatives of CTCL had access to absentee ballots. We're trying to help with the ballot curing process. We think all of that is sort of bad optics. It's bad for faith in our elections, even if nothing untoward actually happens. And so Amendment 1 and 2 both would prevent both of those things from happening in the future, and we think they're a positive.
Well, it's a relief that at least we have an end around, because we don't have a Republican governor that will sign election integrity legislation into law. And until we do have a Republican governor, we're not going to see significant changes other than if we are able to amend our Constitution. So, well, Will, thank you for joining me this morning. Again, your website, will-law.org. Keep up the great work. I sincerely appreciate all that you're doing on behalf of liberty for all citizens here in Wisconsin.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thank you. You too.